Well, hey guys, got Jordan Danchik, and Dr. Michael Hutchings on with us today, and we've been asked several times to do a debrief video from our recent trip to Ukraine, and so much happened in such a short time, and we had the opportunity. Everybody's got busy schedules, and we're I don't know, about a week and a half out now since we've returned, but we wanted to just share a few testimonies. So, Dr. Mike, good morning. Welcome. Good to see you.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back on with you. Miss you guys. We had 10 days of wonderful fellowship and some pretty intense moments, but obviously you had more time there than I did, but it was just an amazing time to be with you guys.
It absolutely was. And then Jordan Danchik. Jordan runs Whole Heart internationally. He's over in the Middle East full time, longtime crowd responder. Jordo, great to see you, buddy.
Great to be with you guys. Yeah, I missed you guys. It was such a special time. Yeah, it was amazing just to be together and to see God working, and it's nice to be back on a call with you guys and seeing your faces and getting a chance to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm already itching to go back personally, but just to set a little framework, we're just going to have a little conversation just about some of the things that God did, and really a public debrief. We haven't done this with one another. We just figured we'd record it. And obviously, debriefing is a really good, important tool for self-care, but also we just want to share stories of what God did. And so a little bit of the premise of what took place, we've been responding, Cry's been responding on the ground since the first week of the war, but we've had teams in and out, different places, different cities. But then, the dynamic of the response changed for us. And one of the things the Lord put in my heart was to address the trauma and really just come alongside the local church, that they could respond well for the long haul. I've seen this many times in different arenas of longer term disaster or crisis situations where compassion fatigue, burnout begins to set in. Obviously, it's hard to unwind or take care of the trauma when it's just ongoing like that. And so I really felt like we were supposed to do a couple of conferences over there. And none of this really would have happened without Dennis and Anya Melanchuk, who are from Ukraine. They're Y workers, Awaken Generation. They were really connected to Global Awakening, but they really helped connect the dots there on the ground. And we were able to meet with some key leaders on a prior trip. And then we got invited to come back to do these conferences, responding to trauma, healing trauma, but also responding to crisis. And that was with Dr. Henry Mandava in Kyiv, and then out in Dnipro with Pastor Maxime and Julia. And the events were just amazing. But I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts, just, right off the cuff, guys, just what your experience was, and how this was for you in terms of, Dr. Mike, I know you've done a lot of different conferences, but to go into an environment, into a war zone, active war zone like that, and then do this sort of thing, what was the experience like for you?
Well, first of all, it was really a privilege to be able to go and support these local churches.
Yeah.
I think that was number one, the thing that drew my heart. First of all, having been to Ukraine in 2015, and not really, I was with YWAM Kyiv, but I really wasn't connected to the local church on the ground. It was really a blessing to be able to really support the local churches. So in Kyiv, obviously with Henry Madava and with Rabbi Boris, as well as all the other pastors that we encountered at Kyiv, was just incredible. First of all, it was surreal. As you guys know, that as we're teaching every day, all of their apps on their phones were going off with air raid sirens.
Yeah.
So what was the very first impression that I received, both being in Kyiv, being in the square where I had visited 8 years before, as well as in the church, is that air raid sirens go on, but life goes on as well. And nobody got up and ran. Nobody, I mean, although everybody you could tell kind of has the 1,000-yard stare, where they're just kind of, they're traumatized, they're numb, they've made life work in the middle of a war zone. So first of all, that was significant. I think the second impression I had was how the church, particularly Henry Madava's church, went on as well. I mean, the worship was phenomenal. Their staff was incredible for us, just making sure everything was done with excellence. So it's not like, you know, we're hunkered down in a war zone and we're in survival mode. As a matter of fact, I think that's the third thing that I came away with, was that the church there was not in survival mode. They were really seeing God move in some incredibly powerful ways. So those were my very first impressions. Obviously, when you're both dealing with people who are in the middle of trauma, they've experienced past trauma, they're in the middle of trauma, and they're expecting more trauma. That sets up a whole nother dynamic of how to minister to them, how to give them resources to not only get healed now, but to stay resilient. But that's the other thing. I found the Ukrainian people incredibly resilient, bouncing back from you know, time after time, being attacked in ways. So those are my first impressions.
Yeah, I think those are really good assessments. And just to comment on the air raid sirens, you know, yeah, it was like, okay, this is new. Never experienced this before. You know, you're up there teaching, speaking, you're in the moment, and all of a sudden everybody's phones are going off. And it does. It definitely, puts you on alert. You get a little bit of adrenaline. Okay, what's happening? What does this actually mean? Now, obviously, they're there all the time, and that's happening on a regular basis. They're probably numb to it. It reminds me of like the Hurricane Dorian that hit the Bahamas. And, one of the triggers for people for, years to come after that is when the wind blew and the metal roofs down there would flap and make the metal sound of, vibration that, again, it would trigger people, and so you just kind of wonder, like really what's going on for people and what are people thinking about when that happens, when they've been through so much. Obviously, Kyiv was a little bit different than Dnipro. Kyiv, has stabilized to a greater degree. Not as many attacks anymore. Dnipro was a different, environment altogether. There were two very unique events. But Jordo, I'd love to hear your experience. You've lived in an active war zone for a long time now, and you took a break from where you're working to go visit another war zone. I'd just love to hear your perspective, on what you felt, what you experienced.
Yeah, that was my first time to Ukraine, and it was an incredible time. And I think something that struck me right away was the hunger and the eagerness of the people. For me, it was a unique experience, as you're mentioning, Sean. I've been in Iraq, and actually, what brought me to Iraq was really a CRI deployment. 2014, and it was just an interesting thing for me. What I had experienced in Iraq was very similar in some ways to what the people had been living through, in an active crisis, because of war, a lot of displaced people, a lot of needs, and then the needs changing according to different threats or a different crisis where there's different movements of people. And so one of the things that struck me was it's kind of a side note, but it ties in the way that when we say yes to God, we don't know where we're going to end up. So for me, for instance, I never knew that I would end up in Iraq, years ago, that would allow me to live here and walk with people through different things. Also, I said yes to go to Turkey, a while ago. And then I didn't know that was going to be the door to open up to go to Ukraine. So all
Yeah.
of it was a surprise, you know. So me, like Dr. Mike said, it was surreal. It was surreal for me to be there, for one, and then also reflecting on the fact that our yes, when we give a yes to God, it actually, you know, it leads us into a place of future opportunities, and our yes actually
Mm.
has a way of preparing us for what God is going to want to do in the future.
Oh,
So
that's
the more
good.
we keep saying yes, the more we end up, you know, in a position where God's going to show up. He's going to use us. So for me, it was really a privilege to be there in the time of need of the people there, and to have something that God had brought me through that was similar. And my experience, I had no clue that all the things that I had gone through, the good, the bad, the ugly, would be something that would be useful for them right now.
Yeah, that's
And
so
it was
cool.
really a gift. The whole thing was really a gift to be there, and to, you know, for me, I had been watching for over a year from a distance, like since the moment the invasion happened. I was watching and praying. And this is another thing, you know, when we pray, we don't know what our prayers are going to lead us into. You know, I had no idea that me being able to pray from a distance was going to put me in a position to be able to actually sow into the church in an active way there. I mean,
Yeah.
what a better way to impact what's going on in the ground there than to sow into the church and sow into the body of believers there. So to me, the whole thing was surreal. It was all a gift in multiple levels, but I fell in love with the people. The people are so beautiful. They have such a resilience. They have such a hunger. They were so eager.
Yeah.
They were tired naturally, but they're so hungry for God. They're so hungry to keep going with what God has, and that was super encouraging to me. It was really humbling overall.
Yeah, it was awesome for me to see that happen for you, Jordan, going back to northern Iraq, and you guys, you know, leading that deployment long term, hosting teams, ISIS here, ISIS doing that, you know, and then to see you, like, you really were the right person to bring that component in to this event, to these events. I really felt like you had something to offer in a really significant way. But I want to bring up a couple of favorite stories. I'm sure you know, we'll all resonate with this, and I'd love to hear from you guys, maybe some highlight moments. But one particular thing that came to mind, Jordan, I would love for you to talk about for a moment, is the smiley face in your coffee cup. I know that sounds kind of funny or strange to people, but I just think that this will be helpful for people to hear this and kind of what God did. And yeah, so tell us about the smiley face.
Yeah. So the other thing I'll just mention in this story was there was a component for me where I'll just be vulnerable. You know, like I was stepping out into something new in a way. You know, I said yes to an invitation. I was tired, and in some ways, as far as like teaching some of the content and some of the things that I'd learned through the years, um, it was a new setting for me to share those things, and that was a little scary or a little hard, and I felt warfare, and it was kind of intense going into
And
it.
4 days off in between Turkey after being
Yeah,
there
so I didn't
for
have a
a
lot of
month.
lead time to prepare, but so in the midst of all of that, it was was I was in the hotel, and I was just kind of praying about the day and feeling all that warfare. But I'm just like, Lord, I'm here. You arranged all this. I'm just going to keep walking forward. But I looked down, and they have all these coffee machines throughout the country, and the way that I got a cappuccino, and it normally drips 2 spots of coffee. Once the milk is in, the coffee goes in, and there's 2 spots where the coffee goes, and there's 2 brown spots. I'd taken a few drinks, and then I looked down, and I'm just reflecting, Lord, how do you feel about today? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts of the people? What are your thoughts of me? And I looked down, and there was this perfect happy face in the cup, and it just hit my heart. I was just like, wow. And then it struck me, and I go, am I seeing this? Like, am I imagining this, or is this just me? So I showed Mike, I showed Sean, I showed everyone on our team, and they're like, no, that's really a happy face. So I took a picture of it, and I actually shared it in my teaching to encourage people about not ignoring their emotions, and the fact that God's given us emotions, and then really that God God has emotions, and so I hope, in a way, I hope it's helpful for them too, because I think that would be a common sight that they would see, that common two dots there, and who knows, maybe God's going to give them a smiley face and encourage them later on, and they can have a reference in their daily life that there's a God who loves them, He's present with them in the midst of what they're going through, and His heart is for them, and so that was super fun. That was super fun for me, super encouraging.
That's really cool. I walked into the auditorium. I remember you showing me the picture of the smiley face, and then I walked into the training, and there it is up on the screen. And I was just chuckling to myself. I'm like, this is awesome. It was funny too. I'd share a real quick story, and then Dr. Mike, I'm gonna share a story about you. But um, we were eating dinner in Lviv. We had taken 2 days to break because we had gone out to the front lines and whatnot. But we were eating our last meal in Lviv. We were going to travel the next day, and I had set the salt shaker down in front of me, and I looked down, and there's the same smiley face is there on the table. And I looked at it and I said, Jordan, look, there's your smiley face again. Come on, world tour, you could take this. This is going to preach. You got to go for it. And the next morning, because you really do carry that. You really do carry a joy of the Lord, and you have so much love. Your life overflows with love for God and for people in a really unique way. And that's one of the things I really love about you. But the next morning, I'm in the hotel room, and the Lord said, that smiley face was for you. And I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, wait, it was facing towards me. And I began to think about that a little bit. And, it's so easy to think that God loves somebody else more, but He doesn't love me like that. He loves Jordan more, and He loves Dr. Mike more. He tolerates me. That thinking gets in our brains. And He goes, no, that was for you, and I began to think about this, about, His love. And I began to get really grateful, which is one of the things you talked about a lot, Jordan, was gratitude. And as I was thinking about that, I began to think about the girl who ran the front desk of the hotel we were staying in, and how she really just head and shoulders above the other help at the hotel. They're all great, but she was just so genuine and so hospitable. Anyway, I just began to think about her, and I had gratitude for her. And I just said, Lord, do you have anything to say to Emily today? And He said, yeah, tell her it's her birthday, and it's in April. And I kind of gulped. I'm like, really? Like, that's it? And so I walked downstairs. We were checking out of the hotel, and I was really kind of like, how do I, approach this one? Well, the Lord spoke to me today that it's your birthday. Like, that just seemed weird to me. And so as we're checking out, she slides a box of cookies across the counter to me that's got this red bow. And that's what they do when guests check out. And I go, Emily, a gift for me? I feel like I should be giving you a gift. You've been amazing. As a matter of fact, it feels like it's my birthday right now. And she kind of laughed. I said, matter of fact, you have a birthday coming up. And she kind of looked at me, and I said, it's in April too, isn't it? And she goes, who told you that? And then it was the perfect segue to just tell her that God sees her, He loves her, He delights in her. The presence of the Lord fell in that moment. It was one of my trip highlights, because it was just a direct overflow from the love of God. And that's where all fruitfulness and all ministry comes from anyhow. But Dr. Mike, I want to bring this up real quick for you. A couple of highlights, but just going back and watching the video, two things that just really stood out. You wrote an amazing book called The Supernatural Freedom from the Captivity of Trauma, which this book, if you don't have it, you got to get it. It really is one of the best trauma healing models I have seen out there. We've used it all over the world, and the book is incredible. I think everybody needs this, because PTSD and trauma is everywhere. It used to be just for first responders and military. But so you brought this over to the Ukrainian people. I couldn't think of a better fit for what's going on in the earth right now. We saw a tremendous amount of healing in both locations. Really, I'm thinking of the police and the first responders and the military chaplains and the impact that that had. Not only it's going to make me cry right now, just because I know how much it impacted and how hungry and desperate they were for real tools. And you can imagine how overwhelmed they are with how much need is around them. But I remember one moment where you were standing on the platform. I walked into the back of the room and you were doing this Braveheart thing, freedom, freedom. But it just had such an authority and a weight of God on it that, you were speaking truth in the midst of, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of chaos and confusion. And you were prophesying, that Ukraine would be a free nation. That was so beautiful. It was really a highlight moment. But another highlight moment I want to bring up, and I'd just love to hear your thoughts after this, but was our interpreter in Kiev, Emma. And Emma, she was mostly my interpreter and she did an incredible job. All of them did. But I remember looking down at her several times while, like, maybe I was praying for somebody or while I was speaking, and she would have her hand on her stomach, and I could see that she was praying in the spirit, and she had this concerned look on her face. And I didn't know what was going on, but I took notice of it. And then, Dr. Mike, you said to me, you said, Emma's got a tumor. And I said, I didn't know that. And obviously you might have prayed for her and at that point. And then I know that the team had prayed for her, but then you prayed for her very specifically. And so that was in Kiev. We get to Dnipro and you're up there speaking, and I get the testimony sent to me on Telegram, and I can't even hear what you're saying. I'm looking at the sonogram. I'm looking at her standing at the sonogram. I'm looking at the doctor's report. I'm like jumping out of my seat, and like for your whole session, I just wanted to run up on the platform and like go, oh, this is what God did. I was so excited. And I would never do that. You were getting ready to go into a ministry time, and I know you would have appreciated it. I know you appreciated it in the end. I walked up onto the stage. I said, I need to interrupt before we go into ministry. And you didn't even know. And we were able to throw the pictures up on the screen, and Emma got healed. She went back to the doctor after you prayed for her, and the tumor had disappeared. And I was just blown away. I couldn't even talk. I know you couldn't talk, but just share your heart about some of those things that you saw, Mike.
Well, as you know, in Kiev at Henry Madava's church, during one of my ministry times, we did words of knowledge and asking the Lord to bring healing to physical conditions. And at one point, the Lord spoke to me and said, push the envelope, and just anybody who has any pain whatsoever in their body, just go for it. And we saw a lot of people that day physically healed of a lot of issues through both words of knowledge as well as pain leaving their body. But Emma was one that didn't get healed at that moment. And there were about 3 or 4 others that didn't. So afterwards, I encountered her and I said, okay, tell me what's going on in your body. And then she explained it to me. So I had her lay her hand on the place where the tumor was. And as I prayed, and she says later, she said she could feel something.
She felt
moving.
something.
Yeah, she could feel something moving. And of course, the rest is God's history in terms of just the complete removal of the tumor. And I think that was significant in that the physical healings that I saw, and I know you guys saw in Dnipro, particularly that last day of the conference, was a sign and wonder to the Ukrainian people that God was still moving. God loves them. He sees them. He's not abandoned them. Of course, that's the whole purpose of a sign and wonder. It's not to make us look good. It's to show the people how much God loves them in a significant way. I think the other thing that really touched me in a massive way was the first night at Dnipro, there was, I guess, a missile came down on an oil storage facility outside of town. And one of the men that was part of that conference, I spoke that first night, I ended with talking about the shalom of God. And he came back the next day and gave a testimony of how he heard the explosion. I guess it was really close to his house. He stepped out. and he had such peace. He used to have panic attacks and all sorts of anxiety and fear, and his family did as well. And he testified how he could feel that shalom all over him, all over his family. He went and slept that night, which is, I mean, it's massive to live in a war zone, to have missiles raining down, very close to your home, and still be able just to feel the overwhelming peace and the grace of God upon. I mean, it touched my heart so much that he had experienced that. So that obviously we saw a lot of folks get healed of trauma, of their past trauma, and taught them both through my teachings as well as y'all's teaching about how to manage it from here on out. But those were two very big highlights for me.
So good. So good. Jordan, how about any other highlights for you? Things that you'd want people to know or hear about?
I think one thing that comes to mind is, even just being able to see you guys and talk with you right now. It was 10 days, or Sean and I had more, but just us three, together, it was 10 days together. And it was, it's such a bonding time. It's such a special time. The team that comes together when you say yes to God in these kind of environments. I'm thinking as well, like thinking whoever's listening, cry responders listening to this, when you say yes to going to deployment, the dynamics of what happened when you get in those settings, it's so incredible. It's so special because you're with like-minded people, and then God is attracted to those that are in contrite of spirit, or broken, or in suffering. So crisis, like the Lord is there moving in the midst of people wanting to touch them, and you're stepping into that environment, and you're coming in as a team, like-minded. It's just such a powerful setting, and it was so great to be able to share that with you guys, and it truly is life changing. My heart is so touched for the Ukrainian people, and being in that environment where God's pouring out, and then he's pouring out through each of us, and we're sharing in that together, and seeing God really affect the hearts of people that are so hungry and so desperate. I don't know, it's so unique. And so I'm reflecting on Turkey, being in that setting in Turkey, before Ukraine, I had the privilege of being there with a couple different teams, and those settings are so unique. And so in one sense, there's a lot of things that could keep us from stepping into those places, because there's danger involved, and there's the unknown, and then there's our own personal fears, and you have fears of your family and friends that don't want you to go to dangerous places. But these are the places where God's moving. And when we step into those environments and we get there with marvelous comrades who have the same heart, it's just such a dynamic place. It's such an incredible place. And I was so privileged to share that with you guys and see God work through you. And my story, it's like I've been saying yes to God, and he's been preparing me. And so Ukraine was kind of a snapshot of that as well. But the same could be said for you guys as well. I was so blown away sitting there seeing you guys share. Sean, it's been 20 plus years of you being in these environments, and you didn't choose this. God, like you said yes, but God led you into these environments. He led you into ministry and crisis, and all the things that you were able to share with people in that setting that are so helpful, that they're not just theory. You've lived them. You've seen God working and doing it. And same for you, Dr. Mike. You didn't PTSD and healing PTSD, this model, you didn't come up with that. You were led, you got thrown into it. And now it's such a powerful reality of the outflow of your life, that what God's shown you is such a powerful tool. And so anyways, I'm just thinking about anybody that's listening and even having those thoughts. It's so great that you guys did that, but I don't know, that sounds a little scary to me, to go into a war zone, or obviously we follow the Lord, but these are such amazing places to find God, meet with God, and watch him show up, because he's just looking for people that are willing. He's just looking for someone that's willing.
Sean, I want to say this. I think the message of Crisis Response International is that you go into very, very difficult and dangerous places as a ministry. And the message to the people there is that God has not abandoned you. God
Hmm.
has not forsaken you, that his eye is on you. And, you know, we in America, because we still, you know, even if you live in some difficult cities, we still are pretty safe. We still, you know, can move about safely. And to live in an environment where you have air raid sirens going off, you're living around buildings that have been destroyed by missiles. And to have the privilege of coming to those people and saying, look, you may feel abandoned by the world, but you're not abandoned by God, which is a huge thing. I've got to tell you one story that you guys don't know about. So
Okay.
we're going back across the Ukrainian border with Dennis and Anya. And you all know that I had my old school Samsonite suitcase that still had some books left in it that I brought about 75 books with me and had given them away. But I saved some back for Dennis. So when the border guard opened the back door of the van, the only suitcase he picked out was the Samsonite. So we open it up and pulls out the book, and he begins to ask Anya, what is this? So Anya begins to translate what we did, what we were there for, and everything like that. And he says, oh, yeah, I know all that. They just brought me back from the front, and now I'm a border guard because I was having so much trouble with adrenaline and so much bad memories, and I don't sleep and all this other stuff. And so he was perfectly describing a soldier. I think he had just come from Bakhmut, a
Wow.
soldier who was suffering with severe PTSD. And so I told Anya, I said, well, will he let me pray for him? And so she translated, and he kind of looked at me with these big eyes and goes, yeah, yeah. So we had to pull over once we got through passport control. We had to pull over and wait for him. So we had the van door open, and he comes into the van and shuts the door. And so I begin to pray for this guy, and Anya's translating, and these huge tears just start streaming down his
Mm.
face, and he begins to shake a little bit, and just an incredible thing. And then at the end, he gives me this great big. I mean, he's a huge guy. Gives me this great big bear hug, and the last thing he does is he literally takes a patch that's held on by Velcro, rips it off of his uniform, and he hands it to me, and he says, "Thank you." And I gave him a copy of
Wow.
the book. He was going to get it translated. I said it's in English, and he says, "I'll get it translated." You know, so what an amazing encounter at the
I
border
love it. I
for this
love
guy.
it.
It was just incredible. So
That's so much
That's
fun.
awesome.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we had a little bit of a different adventure at the border getting back in. We had been given some gifts from soldiers out on the front lines, and it took us about 5 hours to get through. We got searched, and we had an ordeal that I won't get into now, but it was a very funny story, including a flat tire as well. We did get to pray for a policeman briefly as well, who was giving us quite the hassle. But anyway, I want to go back just a moment, just about going into the hard places. And it's something that's really, really heavy on my heart right now in a significant way, because obviously this is what we do. And, I consider it an absolute privilege and honor to be able to have the green light from God, to be sent from God, and have the opportunity to send people to stand alongside of them in their darkest hour. I mean, there's a fear of the Lord on that. There's an honor, there's a reverence that God is, I don't know the word, sanctioned us to do that. Um, it's an incredible honor to go into these chaotic, painful, traumatic situations, whether it's the earthquake in Turkey, or the war in Ukraine, or whatever else is going on. But we're in a moment right now where there's a lot of uncertainty in America again. We've been in it, but it seems like they come almost in like these contractions where all of a sudden, we go back to life as normal, but then all of a sudden, We have uncertainty in the financial markets. We have uncertainty politically. You name it. You could just throw things up on the board. But, um, you know, yet we have these events unfolding. We had 38 tornadoes, the other night, and the meteorologists are going, we have no language to explain why this is happening. We've never seen this before. All of those things that we've been hearing for years. These things are increasing, and the stakes are going up as well in the midst of it, meaning it costs us more to actually go to these types of events. And I don't think it's far-fetched to think that an earthquake like what we saw in Turkey, or even what's happening in Ukraine, someday, some way, could be happening here at home. I mean, that's not what I hope, but we have to think through that. Like, that could be here at some point. And it's easy to say, well, that's over there and I'm safe here, but anyway, I'm seeing this where, when this uncertainty pops up, obviously the human nature is to kind of hold on to the sense of normal, the sense of comfort, the sense of, just normalcy and safety. It's the way we're wired as humans. But the nature of the kingdom is you give it away to keep it. And so you go and you lay your life down, and you go and you give away your resources and your time. And, you stick your hand up in the air when everything's against you and you don't have any money and it doesn't seem likely. And then you just watch what God can do through it. And that's really been the story of Cry over and over again for the last 16 years. Is just, I don't know. I feel so inadequate. And what can I really do? What difference can I make? But you've heard these stories, the story that Mike just told, and the story of Jordan just told. Like, what if they said no to going to Ukraine? That border guard wouldn't have gotten touched. Emma's tumor wouldn't have went away. Jordan, all the lives that you touched over there, they wouldn't have got it if you wouldn't have said yes. And I feel like God's got these divine appointments. He's got great exploits planned, but it's too often we take inventory of our personal weaknesses, all the reasons why we can, or all the reasons why it's too dangerous, or we listen to the naysayers around us, and we disqualify ourselves from these historic exploits. And I believe personally that these things are going to continue to increase, but God's glory, His power, and His kingdom is going to continue to expand. And I keep trying to normalize this for people. Jesus warned us in Matthew 24: wars, rumors of wars, famines, and earthquakes. But it's in that context that the Great Commission is fulfilled. That's what He says. He says that. And then in that hour, in wars, rumors of wars, famines, earthquakes, lawlessness, great offense, that the gospel, a demonstration of God's kingdom, will go to every nation. It's in that vacuum. It's in the midst of that desperation. Daniel said, my people will know my name and do great exploits. But anyway, that's my passion right now, is to continue to encourage people. Like, go find some dark corner of the earth, or go find some dark situation in your neighborhood, or, in your local, city, or, it might be that hopeless neighbor that lives next door that you don't want to darken the doorway of their front door, whatnot. Find a hopeless situation. Watch what God can do. That's His specialty. It's not about our strength. It's not about our abilities. And you know what? Like, do it afraid. Move towards it. Even if you're struggling with, just do it afraid. Just go for it. Jordan and I had the incredible opportunity of staying longer. Mike's schedule didn't allow him. He had to get back for an event that he had actually postponed to do this. He wasn't able to come with us. But Jordan and I had the opportunity. Our schedules allowed to be able to go out to the front lines, all the way out east. And it was the last time I went out there. We took 2 mortar rounds going over this one bridge. It's a known choke point where they have drones up, and you can see on video the vehicles that have been blown up and pushed into the water off the bridge. And when they told me that's where we were going, I gulped. I mean, I'm like, I'm struggling right now. Like, I know we almost died last time going across that bridge. The mortar rounds were 2 of them were about 20 feet away from both of our vehicles. But I just, Lord, I feel like you're doing this. I'm going to continue to go. We actually had the opportunity to go out there, and We led a bunch of soldiers to the Lord, but just going even back to what you said, Dr. Mike, just the fact that Americans being there in Ukraine, we're physically saying with our presence, "Hey, God is with you. He's for you. We're here with you. We're showing up." And we're not just saying mere words, thousands and thousands of miles away, but with our presence, with our physical bodies, we're here, we're standing with you. And that was a really powerful thing, a ministry of presence. And we got to go out to frontlines hospitals, one of which was, currently under fire. You got to understand that the Russians specifically hit the hospitals because they know their military. Over 800 hospitals have either been bombed or hit. And to go in and again use the tools Dr. Mike gave us and Jordan carries, and to be able to go in and sit with the soldiers, injured soldiers, and pray for them and break off trauma and bring hope and whatnot was incredible. But one very unique thing that happened that I wanted to just mention real quick is we had bought a bunch of supplies. We went out to this hospital. I had forgotten about the supplies that we bought. It was, I don't know, about close to $4,000 in different supplies that we had for these couple of hospitals and for the front lines for the soldiers. But this hospital administrator had given us a tour of the whole place. They're receiving 150 patients a day, wounded soldiers a day, and every day that was going up by either 10 or 20 soldiers. And they showed me the operating room, which was pretty, primitive, and they were trying to build a new one. And after he gave me the whole tour, I said, Doc, what's your greatest need here? And he goes, well, we need this machine. And I can't remember the name of it, but it basically allows the surgeons to go from only doing 4 to 6 hour surgeries to doing 8 to 12-hour surgeries. It had to do with the O2, with oxygen. And I said, wow, and I thought to myself, I'd really like to help them with this. I didn't realize we actually had bought the machine and we had it there with us. And so we were able to turn around and give this administrator this key pieces of equipment so they could do 8 to 12-hour surgeries to save these guys' lives. What an honor, what a privilege to be able to be there and literally save lives in a practical way. And I just want everybody to be able to experience that. Like, it's such an incredible thing. And when you see the response of the Ukrainian people, it's so beautiful. It's so grateful that you're there. And, all of the systems are just overwhelmed. I mean, the heart is there. Their heart, their courage, it's amazing. But as you're watching hospitals and schools and apartment buildings be bombed day in and day out, all the systems are taxed. And but I just want everyone to be able to experience that opportunity to go stand with these folks. And it really is, it's an incredible opportunity to do this sort of thing. So Mike, any more
Sean,
thoughts that you had? Yeah.
Last October, for the first time, I brought a message on the trauma that you get by following Jesus. And it's out of Matthew chapter 10, verses 16 through 40. And Jesus calls his disciples to go and advance the kingdom. He gives them all this power and authority to do all these miracles, signs, and wonders. But then he says, you know what? Everybody's going to hate you. Your family's going to betray you. They're going to take you before the courts. They're going to scourge you. I mean, he's basically saying, I'm sending you into dangerous ground. Every place you're going to go is going to be anti everything that you are and everything that you do. And it's interesting. I was at the Empowered Conference this last week in Colorado Springs with Andrew Olmec's ministry and Global Awakening. And at the end of that session, I had 4 Ukrainian refugees come up to receive ministry afterwards.
Wow.
And what they said is, we want to go back. We want to go back to our country and bring this good news to our people, which was a phenomenal thing. And I think you're right, Sean. The experience that you have, even though there's an element of danger involved. I had a number of people come up to me and say, man, I mean, you either have a great amount of faith or you're really foolish to go do that. I said, no, you obey the call of God. I mean, ultimately, are you going to obey God or not? It has nothing to do. I mean, yes, faith means I'm going to respond and say yes to God, but ultimately it just has to be, you're just going to trust him in the midst of it, that number one, you're going to be okay. And if you're not okay, it's going to work out, because there is no, right, Sean, there is no guarantee. There is no
Yep.
100% guarantee that everything is going to be okay, but
Yeah.
you have to obey God ultimately. And that's the thing. So I just, I'm so glad to be able to partner with you guys and see this happen. I do want to go back to Ukraine. I have to admit selfishly that I would rather fly into Ukraine the next time. Just saying.
Yeah, as soon as they open up the
A lot of
skies,
driving.
it's a lot had to driving. That was
But you guys
probably
did
the
a
most
great job
painful part.
driving. But this 60, almost 69-year-old body had to do a little recovery afterwards. So anyway, but
Yeah,
I'm good.
well, you did amazing. Just a
Take
comment
care.
on what you just said. I think two things for me personally. This is how it worked for me. You just got to do the math ahead of time. Okay, you're going to go into an environment like it's. I'll use the analogy of flying on an airplane. People struggle with fear with flying on an airplane. I heard somebody say, I have no problem with flying. I love flying. What I'm scared of is hitting the ground at 550 miles an hour. So you just have to do the math and just go, well, look, what's the worst can happen? Okay, the worst can happen. I'll die and spend 1 billion years with Jesus, and just, you can't let your fears own you. And, the fact of the matter, okay, you die, you know, a half a second after you die, does it really matter at that point anyway? You're going to be in glory. And so how does it matter that how you die or, whatnot? Obviously, we want to live our lives and we don't want to leave our families and all of that. I'm not saying advocating stupid stuff, but I'm talking about when God calls you to a place, you just got to do the math. And where I started doing that, Jordan, when we were in northern Iraq, every time I flew into northern Iraq, about every 6 weeks, I was going over there, just had to do the math and just really run at the fear, not run from the fear, not let the fear own me. Many times I've been afraid and I've had to work through that. And I really think that's the way to work through fear is you move towards it. Don't run away from it. Don't feed your fears, run towards it. And you find when you're on the other side of it, like, wow, the fear was worse than what I actually experienced. The experience was absolutely amazing. So that's definitely one thing. The other thing I've heard people say to me, and this is about obedience. People have said to me this thousands of times. They come up to me, thank you so much for your obedience to do cry and do what you do. And I appreciate that comment. I know what people are saying, but I go, is Jesus really Lord? Like, is it really an option to obey? I mean, have you ever been to Numnumville? You don't want to go there. You don't want to be in the wilderness in the desert when you don't obey. It's a terrible place to be, And so, where else can we go? What else can we do? But, and really, I think about the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. Let your kingdom come, let your will be done. And I think about the word of the Lord, his word to us, it's bread to us, And so when God's word comes to our lives, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm completely addicted, completely hooked on the next thing that he's going to tell me or say to me. And it's everything. And so, for that and for what he's done for us, he's worthy to go anywhere, any place, anytime.
Amen.
And he just is, So, well, let me say this real quick, Mike. And I'll put this link in the description, but how can people find your book? How can they get in touch with you, host you, your trauma events that you do personally?
Sure. I have a website, godhealsptsd.com. They can buy a book and some of my teachings on that. You can also find the book on Amazon. They can also invite me through the globalawakening.com page. If they look for the tab invite a speaker, and I'm under the associates page, and you can invite me that way. We're working right now on getting my book translated into Ukrainian.
Awesome.
So we're raising some funds for that and trying to find a translator, but we want to give away as many copies of my book as I can to the pastors and leaders in Ukraine. Henry even said he was going to do his best to get my book in the hands of the president of Ukraine. So I've actually been praying for that because I think he needs to heal from trauma himself. But anyway, so that's it. godhealsptsd.com or go to the globalawakening.com webpage.
Right on. And Jordo, you're over in Northern Iraq, Whole Heart International. I know you host teams, you're doing different programs over there. How can people get a hold of you, come partner with you?
Yeah, so our website, wholeheartinternational.org, you can email through that, or Jordan at wholeheartinternational.org. So, yep, that's a way to get a hold of us. So,
Yeah, good deal. Well, if you're watching this and you're interested in becoming a CRI responder, disaster relief crisis response volunteer, we only deploy trained responders. You can take online training, or you can come to an online, I'm sorry, to a live event, and you can find us at criout.com. And we'd love to see you out there. That's my thing. I just want to train and mobilize, see more people. A lot of things going on out there. But to you guys, I'm just going to say, I'm looking for another opportunity to go back to Ukraine. I think that this can be done in many other cities. And then I'm also praying as well over in Turkey. I'm just saying, the trauma from that earthquake, we saw it firsthand, Jordan and I, when we were there for that second earthquake. And to see the response of the people, the trauma is super deep. And I know what we did in Ukraine could be really, really powerful to equip the local church there as well. I'm just praying for the Lord to open up the doors of opportunities again in Ukraine, possibly in Turkey. We'll just see what the Lord does. But guys, thank you so much for coming and serving Ukraine. It was just amazing. Thank you, Dennis and Anya Melanchuk, for putting
Yes.
that all together, and the
yeah,
host, Pastor Maxime, and then Dr. Henry Mandava and Boris Krishenko, Rabbi Boris Krishenko, and all the other pastors that helped put that together. Pastor Andre, thank you so much for hosting us and allowing us to bring what we can bring and contribute in the midst of what you guys are going through over there. But to everyone else, God bless you guys. Thanks for joining in, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks for listening.